I remember the smell first. Not the sweet scent of freshly baked bread that had perfumed my childhood, but the bitter, acrid stench of smoke, sharp, suffocating, alive. The bakery was burning. I stumbled through the back alley, my lungs clawing for air, the night sky pulsing red above the roofline. The firelight danced on the puddles of oil and water, and somewhere within that inferno, I could still hear the sound of metal trays collapsing, ovens exploding, glass shattering under unbearable heat. And then, through the crackling roar, I heard him. "Clara! Don't go in there." But I did. I pushed past the collapsing doorway, the heat searing my arms. The world blurred, flour dust and smoke swirling like a ghostly storm. I could barely see the rows of bread racks melting into blackened skeletons, the counter where he once smiled at every customer. "Dad!" I screamed. The flames answered back with a roar. My eyes stung, tears streaming down soot-streaked cheeks. Somewhere beneath the collapsing beams, I thought I saw a figure, still, slumped, surrounded by fire. My heart froze. I tried to reach him. The floor groaned under my feet, and then a violent crack split the air, and everything went white. When I woke, the world was silent. The air reeked of wet ash and burnt sugar. Fire trucks lined the street, red lights flickering like distant heartbeats. Someone was shouting my name, but it sounded far away, like it was underwater. That was the night everything ended, the night I realized that our family's legacy was built not just on recipes and hard work, but on lies. 3 weeks earlier. The morning sunlight spilled through the bakery's wide glass windows, catching the dust motes in a golden haze. It was the smell that woke me every day: yeast, sugar, cinnamon, and nostalgia. Foster's Bakery, the sign read, though that name doesn't exist anymore. We'd been the pride of our town for decades. My father, Samuel Foster, was the kind of man whose hands told a story, calloused from kneading dough, strong but gentle when he spoke. He'd started the bakery with my late mother, and after she died, the ovens became his way of keeping her close. To most people, he was a saint. To me, he was a mystery. That morning, I found him sitting at the counter, staring at a letter. His coffee had gone cold. "Dad?" I asked softly. "Everything okay?" He folded the paper slowly, almost reverently. "Clara," he said, voice low. "There are things about this family, things you don't know yet." I laughed it off. "What, like secret recipes?" He didn't smile. "Something like that," he said, standing up. "Just promise me, if anything happens, you'll stay out of it." I should have asked what he meant. But I didn't. That was my first mistake. That afternoon, 2 strangers came into the bakery. They weren't customers. They didn't smell of sugar or coffee, they smelled of cologne, money, and trouble. One of them, a tall man with ice blue eyes, leaned over the count. "You Samuel Foster?" he asked. My father nodded. "Then we have a problem," the man said. "A debt that's past due." I froze. Debt? My father didn't gamble. He didn't owe anyone anything, at least, that's what I believed. But when my father's hands trembled, I knew something inside me had just cracked. That was the day the piece ended. And it was only the beginning of what would become the darkest chapter of my life, the unraveling of everything I thought I knew about family, love, and the cost of silence. The morning after those 2 men came into the bakery, everything felt different. Even the air. The smell of yeast and butter that once felt comforting now made me nauseous. My father moved through the kitchen like a ghost, silent, distracted, his once steady hands trembling as he kneaded dough. I wanted to ask him about the men, about the debt, but every time I tried, he'd change the subject. That evening, after closing, he sat me down at our worn-out wooden table. The fluorescent light flickered overhead. He looked older than I'd ever seen him, his eyes hollow, as if he'd been awake for days. "Clara," he said quietly, "if anything happens to me, there's a letter in my study. Top drawer. Don't read it unless you have to." "Dad, you're scaring me." He smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. Some truths burn hotter than fire, he said. I don't want them touching you. Those were the last calm words we shared. That night, I couldn't sleep. The words, "Don't read it unless you have to," played on loop in my mind. By dawn, curiosity had already won. I slipped into his study, the faint smell of cigar smoke and old books heavy in the air. The drawer creaked open, revealing a single cream-colored envelope, my name written across it in my father's neat handwriting. My fingers shook as I tore it open. Inside was a letter, and a photograph. The picture was old, maybe 25 years ago. My father stood outside the bakery, arm around a woman who wasn't my mother. In her arms was a little girl, maybe 4 years old, with my eyes. My breath caught. The letter was brief, handwritten in my father's careful, deliberate style. Clara. There are things you were never told. Decisions I made that I thought would protect you, but I see now that lies, no matter how sweet, eventually turn bitter. You have a sister. Her name is Evelyn. She doesn't know about you, and I pray she never finds out what I did to her mother. I never meant for this to come to you like this, but if they come for the bakery, understand, it isn't just about money. It's about what was taken from them. Please, forgive me. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear myself breathe. A sister? A secret woman? A crime? The bakery's walls suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. I stumbled back, nearly knocking over a framed photo of my mother. Her smile, gentle, knowing, seemed to accuse me. What had he done? Over the next few days, my father became even more withdrawn. I tried to. Then one evening, as we were closing, the tall man with ice-blue eyes returned. This time, he wasn't alone. 2 others followed, silent, serious, the kind of men who moved like they'd done this before. My father stepped forward, blocking me from them. I told you I'd get it, he said, his voice low. You're out of time, the blue-eyed man replied. You should have thought of that before you crossed her. Her. I froze. Who was her? My father didn't answer. He reached under the counter. I thought for a moment he might grab a knife, but instead, he pulled out an envelope. Thick. Heavy. The man took it, opened it, smiled faintly. Smart man, he said. Maybe you do care about your daughter after all. My father said nothing. And then, as quietly as they had come, they left. I turned to him, trembling. Dad, what's going on? Who are these people? He looked at me with eyes that seemed older than time itself. Clara, he whispered, I've made enemies you can't imagine. And they've finally come to collect. That night, I didn't sleep. Again. Instead, I sat in the kitchen, staring at the flames flickering in the oven window, feeling like the fire inside that steel box was just waiting to spill out into the world. By dawn, I'd made my decision. If my father wouldn't tell me the truth, I'd find it myself. That decision would cost me everything. I left the bakery before sunrise. The air was cold and sharp, and a thin mist curled along the street like breath from something sleeping beneath the earth. I didn't tell my father where I was going. I didn't even know exactly where that was, only that I couldn't stay in that place another second, not after what I'd read. The photograph burned in my pocket like a secret I couldn't hide. A sister. A stranger with my eyes. All I had was a name, Evelyn. I started with the address scribbled faintly on the back of the photograph, an old neighborhood on the far side of town. The kind of place where shutters sagged and the air smelled of rust and rain. When I got there, I almost turned back. The building looked abandoned, peeling paint, boarded windows, a broken swing creaking in the yard. But there was light inside. A single bulb flickering behind a curtain. I knocked. Once. Twice. The door opened halfway. A woman stood there, older than me by maybe 5 years, hair tied back, eyes sharp and suspicious. Can I help you? My voice caught. I think you're my sister. The silence that followed was unbearable. She studied me like she was trying to decide if I was real. "Who sent you?" she finally asked. "No one," I said. "I found a letter. From Samuel Foster." The name landed like a knife. Her lips tightened. "So, he finally told you?" I shook my head. "He didn't tell me anything. I found it after he said if something happened, I'd know what to do." Evelyn stepped back and opened the door wider. "Then you'd better come in. Before someone sees you." The inside of her flat smelled of dust and rain. Stacks of books and unopened boxes lined the walls. On a table sat a framed photo of a woman I'd never seen before, a woman with my nose, my chin, my mother's warmth in her smile. "That's her," Evelyn said quietly. "My mother. Your father ruined her life." I wanted to argue, to say he couldn't have, but deep down, I already knew I wouldn't like the truth. "What did he do?" I asked. Evelyn poured 2 cups of tea, her hands trembling slightly. "He promised her everything. Love, a future, safety. Then one night, he disappeared. Took the money they'd saved to open their own bakery, money that wasn't his, and used it to build yours." My stomach turned. "No, that can't be right." She met my eyes, unflinching. "You grew up in his bakery, didn't you? Eating his bread, working beside him? Every loaf you sold was baked with the money he stole from us." The words cut deeper than any knife. I thought of my father's trembling hands, his sleepless nights, his warning, "Some truths burn hotter than fire." This was what he'd meant. Then Evelyn leaned closer. "He didn't just steal from us, Clara. He betrayed someone far more dangerous. My mother's sister, Margaret. She wasn't just a baker. She ran money for people who don't forgive debt. When he vanished, he took their money too." My breath caught. "The men who came to the bakery?" Evelyn nodded. "Margaret's people. She died years ago, but they still collect what's owed in her name." I sank into the chair, the room spinning. My entire life, the bakery, our home, everything, had been built on theft. Evelyn stared at me with something between pity and anger. "You should have stayed away. They'll come for you now too." "Then help me stop them," I said. Her expression darkened. "You don't stop people like that. You survive them." She stood, went to a drawer, and pulled out an old key. She pressed it into my hand. "This opens the safe in your father's office. Whatever's inside, it's the reason they haven't killed him yet." I hesitated. "How do you know about the safe?" "Because he kept a duplicate ledger," she said. "My mother helped him write it." The words chilled me. "You've known about me all this time?" She looked away. "Yes. But I hoped you'd never find me. For both our sakes." I left her flat as the first drops of rain began to fall. The street was empty, too empty. Halfway down the block, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow. Heavy. I turned, heart pounding. Nothing but mist. Then, out of the corner of my eye, a black car idled at the corner. Its headlights flicked once. I started walking faster. Then running. A voice called out, low, cold, familiar. "Clara." I froze. It was the man with the ice-blue eyes. And he was smiling. By the time I reached the bakery, the rain had turned into a full downpour. Thunder rolled through the empty streets like the growl of something waking up. The black car had followed me for nearly 10 minutes before vanishing, but the image of those cold, blue eyes stayed etched in my mind. I was drenched, trembling, but I didn't stop until I reached the back door. I still had my father's spare key. The moment I stepped inside, the familiar smell of yeast and sugar hit me like a ghost of safety I no longer believed in. The ovens were off. The lights dim. Everything felt wrong. I locked the door behind me and went straight to my father's office. The safe was hidden behind an old framed photo of my parents, their wedding picture. I'd never noticed the faint hinge marks before. I pulled the frame aside, revealing a small metal door, just like Evelyn said. The key fit perfectly. The click of the lock echoed louder than thunder. Inside was a stack of papers, an old leather-bound ledger, and, to my horror, a small black handgun. My fingers hovered over it. My father had never owned a gun. At least, I thought he hadn't. I pushed it aside and opened the ledger. At first glance, it looked like business records, names, dates, transactions, but as I read, the pattern made my stomach twist. These weren't customers. They were payments. Large amounts. Some marked with initials. Some with symbols I didn't understand. And one name kept repeating over and over again, Margaret H. At the bottom of one page, written in my father's handwriting, were 4 words that made my blood run cold. The fire settles all debts. My hands began to shake. A noise from behind made me jump, a floorboard creaking in the hallway. I turned off the lamp and froze. The sound of slow footsteps moved closer, then stopped right outside the door. I held my breath. The doorknob turned, once, twice, then stopped. Silence. I waited. Nothing. Then, a faint knock. Clara. It was my father's voice. Relief flooded through me. I swung the door open, but what I saw didn't make sense. He looked pale, drenched from the rain, his eyes wild with something I'd never seen before, fear. "Where were you?" he demanded, grabbing my shoulders. "You've been followed. What were you thinking?" I tried to speak, but he shook me hard enough to make my teeth clack. "I went to see Evelyn," I said finally. He went still. "What did she tell you?" "The truth," I spat. "That you built everything on stolen money. That Margaret's people are coming for us. That you lied to me my entire life." He stepped back, staring at me like he didn't recognize who I was. Then, quietly, he said, "It's worse than that." He sank into his chair, hands covering his face. "I didn't just steal from them," he said. "I was part of them." I froze. He looked up, eyes glassy. "When your mother got sick, I needed money for her treatment. I joined Margaret's operation, laundering cash through the bakery. But when she died, I tried to get out. I took what I could and ran." "And Evelyn's mother?" I whispered. His silence was answer enough. "She didn't deserve what happened," he said finally. "Neither of them did." I wanted to scream, to hit him, to cry, but then another sound cut through the room, a soft, mechanical click. The front door. We both froze. Then came voices. Low. Male. Getting closer. My father stood, reaching for the gun. "They found us," he said. "Get out the back." "No." I whispered. "We can call the police." "It's too late for that," he said, his tone final. "Go, Clara. Now." The footsteps grew louder, the same cold, deliberate rhythm I'd heard in the rain. The man with the ice-blue eyes stepped into the office doorway, smiling faintly, the rainwater dripping from his coat. "Told you we'd see each other again," he said. Behind him were 2 others. Both armed. My father raised the gun. "You're not getting it." The man smiled wider. "You think this is about money, old man? We came for what you took, and for her." His eyes flicked to me. My father's hand tightened on the trigger. "Run, Clara." I turned, but the shot came first. The world blurred into chaos, shouting, gunfire, glass exploding. My father fell backward, clutching his side. I grabbed the ledger and ran, the sound of boots and bullets chasing me through the bakery. As I stumbled into the rain, the last thing I heard was the roar of fire, a sudden explosion behind me as flames tore through the walls. I looked back just once. The bakery, our legacy, was burning. And this time, it wasn't an accident. The world was orange and screaming. Fire clawed at the night sky, and the sound of the bakery collapsing into itself was louder than thunder. I ran until my lungs burned, until the rain turned to steam against my skin. Behind me, the place that had been my childhood, my home, my father's soul, was gone. I didn't stop running. By the time I reached the edge of town, the sirens had started. Red lights flashing in the distance, men shouting, hoses hissing. I stood under the shelter of an abandoned bus stop, the ledger pressed to my chest like it could somehow keep me safe. Every page inside it was a confession, my father's crimes, his deals, the money he stole, the lives he ruined. And somewhere in those pages was my own name. Because I realized then, I wasn't just an innocent bystander. I was part of it, born into it. The police found my father's body the next morning. Gunshot wound to the chest. The bakery burned to the foundation. No trace of the men who did it. They said it looked like a robbery gone wrong. I didn't correct them. For 3 days, I hid in a motel on the outskirts of town. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ledger. I thought about burning it, ending everything. But every time I tried, I saw my father's handwriting, the note that said, "The fire settles all debts." And I realized the fire wasn't meant to erase guilt. It was meant to hide evidence. On the 4th day, someone knocked on my motel door. I froze, my fingers closing around the gun I'd taken from the safe. "Who is it?" "Clara, it's me." Evelyn's voice. I opened the door a crack. She stood there, rain-soaked, eyes bloodshot. She looked like she hadn't slept in days either. "I saw the news," she said softly. "I'm sorry." "Sorry?" I snapped. "You knew everything. You could have warned me." "I tried," she said. "You shouldn't have gone there, Clara. Those men weren't just collectors. They worked for someone worse." I frowned. "Who?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Me." The room tilted. "You?" She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Margaret was my mother's sister, yes, but she wasn't the one running the operation. She was the face. When she died, someone had to take over. Someone who understood the books. Someone who knew how to keep it clean. I shook my head. "No. No, that's not possible." "It's the truth," she said, "boy, steady now. Your father stole from us. He built your entire life on our money. You think I'd let that go?" "You used me," I whispered. She nodded. "I needed the ledger. You were the only one who could find it. And now you've brought it right to me." Her hand slipped into her coat pocket. I raised the gun. "Don't." She froze, eyes flicking to the weapon. "You won't shoot me," she said. "You're not him." Maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't. But I wasn't going to die like he did either. "Why burn the bakery?" I asked. "Why kill him?" She smiled, slow and cruel. "Because he finally ran out of things to steal." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, outside, tires screeched. Headlights flashed across the window. Evelyn's eyes widened. "They found me," she hissed. Before I could ask who, she shoved something into my hands, a small flash drive. "Everything's on here. Accounts. Names. Enough to bring them down. Don't trust anyone. Not the police. Not me." "Why give it to me?" "Because if I die, someone has to finish what your father started," she said. A gunshot cracked through the window. Evelyn fell. I dropped to the floor, glass raining over us. Through the shattered door, I saw figures in D. The next hours were a blur, rain, sirens, running through alleyways, the flash drive clenched tight in my palm. By dawn, I was standing at the edge of the river, the city lights flickering behind me. I looked down at the drive, that tiny piece of plastic that carried generations of secrets. For a moment, I thought about throwing it in. Letting it sink into the mud where all sins eventually belong. But then I heard my father's voice in my mind. Some truths burn hotter than fire. He was right. But maybe some fires need to burn. That was 6 months ago. The ledger and the flash drive are now in police custody, anonymously delivered. A handful of names from those pages are already facing trial. The rest? Still out there. The bakery's lot is empty now. A flat stretch of blackened ground and memories that won't stay buried. Sometimes, when I pass it, I swear I can still smell the bread, that faint sweetness mixed with smoke. People tell me I should let it go. That the past is gone. But I know better. Because the past doesn't vanish. It lingers, like the scent of something burned too deep to clean. And every time I close my eyes, I still see it. The fire, the lies, the blood. My family's legacy. Our inheritance. If you love stories like this, show your love by clicking the subscribe button, like, share and comment. Also let's know where you are watching from.